Wake Up Belize morning vibes, and we're honored to have a brother who we don't need to make much introduction of. He's Emerson Gill, grassroots community activist, has been really on the ground for the last 30 odd years, and has done quite a number of things. So we're not going in the whole wide spectrum of his activities, but we will try to focus primarily on his production of products, his working with the land, his working with training young people about the importance of planting, growing, and the experience he and his wife has had with, I guess you'd call it home gardening, backyard gardening, right here on Zerakote, that they have done some production. So let's start. Welcome, brother.
Good morning.
We're good to see you. We could at least do a thing here. All right. I want to start off with, because of your interests and because you have lived in the States, about the Black Lives Matter movement, the murder of George Floyd, the explosion of what has taken place over the last 2 weeks and more in the United States. Where people, not only black people, but people of all color have come out focusing on the issue of Black Lives Matter and policing inside not only the black community, but now it's generally going to banning of chokeholds and other restraint on police activity. Having worked in Belize, and as I said, you had some experiences in California years ago, how do you see what has happened since the murder of George Floyd?
Well, since the murder of George Floyd, we have other murders. So the murder is still unabated. The next thing that I have been in contact with my colleagues that I have worked with in the United States, and for them, they are saying that there's a very sinister thing that is happening inside of Black Lives Matter. Mm. They're saying that it's being stolen by another force. And that is scary for me because...
What do you mean stolen by another source?
They're saying similarly to how the Black Panthers was infiltrated, the Malcolm X movement was infiltrated, Martin Luther King's movement was infiltrated. They're saying that Black Lives Matter has been infiltrated now, and it has a particular media focus on that movement that is happening. That is supposed to be an organic movement. It's now being a media blitz to create a particular feeling or sentiment. That is the word that I'm getting from.
Well, you have to explore that a little bit more. You're saying that the media, which is still to a large extent an extension of the white supremacist mentality in the United States, you're saying that that media has taken over the Black Lives Matter movement? But how could they do that?
Well,
if they're spokespersons for the BLM, you're saying that somebody is co-opting their movement? How could that be?
What we're hearing is that the way that the Black Lives Matter movement has taken, I remember Malcolm used to say, you could come and you could support me, but in your own organization, in a separate but collective. Inside of the Black Lives Matter movement, what we have is an uncontrolled, almost synergetic connection between white people and black people, which includes the white supremacists. And the white supremacists are creating particular statements and particular features in the media, which is telling a story that it's cool to mix white and black at a time when we're trying to say what it is we as black people are missing. Mm. And we have not gotten that straight yet. Mm. You see? So, and this is coming from my president at the of the UNIA.
I see.
He's very concerned because at his level, he's actually trying to get a post-colonial summit set up right now, and a post-colonial economic summit focused on economics. Because again, Black Lives Matter is not focused. It is firing all over the place. And the true leaders of the diaspora and African, Pan-African movements are concerned.
But is the concern that you are not leading, BLM is not leading the narrative, that the narrative has been taken over by others? And is that a concern of Black Lives Matter, or is it just that it has become such a powerful conversation that Black Lives Matter leaders have been sort of marginalized, and others are, especially because of the media? For example, I'm noticing that CNN and MSNBC is spending a tremendous amount of time nightly analyzing and reanalyzing what took place with George Floyd. And because of their media presence, the Blitzers, the Andersons, the Comos, the Lemon, these persons are high-profile personalities. But does that mean that because they are discussing the issue that they are leading the charge, simply because they are
the voice?
But they have a voice. But they're not on the ground organizing. The people on the ground organizing are still the leaders of the Black Lives Matter
and that's what
movement.
we should see. That's what we should see.
Yeah.
We should
But I'm
see.
wondering, well, I'm just trying to explore what you're saying, because it's important what you're suggesting, especially by saying the Black Panther Party was co-opted, the Malcolm was infiltrated. You're suggesting then the conspiracy that we are not leading our own movement, and that somebody else, like we gone by the back of the bus again.
This is
I don't understand that, nor do I accept it. I'd like you to be able to explain why is it that the suggestion there is that we're not smart enough to stay ahead of the curve.
The suggestion there is that we still don't have a black media.
Well,
The suggestion
I'm not sure how
the
far.
suggestion is that we still are behind in the back of the bus, in the sense that if Black Lives Matter has a voice, and Black Lives Matter has black people and black faces that is leading this charge of this organic thing that we've been seeing that is spread all over the world, why is it that we have a blitzer or this or that person?
Because they won't CNN. We don't got no CNN.
That's and exactly so.
And I'm not sure whether or not, given the time and space, if we will be able to fill that gap, because you know the Chinese have to use them. The Chinese doesn't have its own media in the States. Any other, the Russians or anybody else, if you want to call power blocks, have no choice except to use those medias that become the most popular. There is an RT, which is a Russian thing, but it's not as popular as the one that the ordinary person turns to. There used to be a BET, which is Black Entertainment,
European body.
which was co-opted. That's real co-optation.
Yes.
And then there are a number of little small media outlets. It's a big conversation. Maybe we shouldn't have gone this way, because I want to talk about your products. But that's an intriguing point that you're making, and it can even be related here in terms of who owns the media and who controls the conversation in Belize likewise.
Let me take it a little bit further and say that if the Western media truly wants, they should find these leaders and bring their voices to the forefront.
But is it their responsibility? They have an agenda. Do we have an agenda? That's the question.
No, we have not been able to get our agenda heard. We never get to the point where we say, as a collective, we have point A, point B, point B. Like Marcus Garvey did in the Declaration for the African Negroes of the World.
Yeah.
There is a declaration, and that declaration still stands today. It stands more needed today than it stood in 1922.
This is a big conversation. I better back up from this conversation here, because indeed what you're saying is that the West continues to promote its story, its narrative,
and it neutralizes.
And they're in their right to do so.
Yes, it is.
And so is it that they should adapt and begin to become the voice of other movements, or is it the responsibility of other movements to get up there and to say what they need to say and be just as astute and smart? I say this because there's a dynamic thing going on now with African leaders. And as you know, you almost have to search the net to really understand that that Africa is not standing with its hand out. It's really contributing to its growth. There are a lot of African leaders that are coming together, and they're trying to create a new narrative. But that narrative, in the Western narrative, is on the back of the bus.
Invisible.
All right? The Chinese realize also that if you depend on the Western narrative to be able to tell their story, they're also at a disadvantage. So they have found ways in which they can make sure that what the Chinese is doing, whether they're doing it in Africa, whether they're trying to re-penetrate here in the Caribbean, they have their narrative. We have to also, for example, within our region, since we have concerns here in the Caribbean, we have been trying to do the loop. We've been trying to do a number of things coming out of CARICOM, but clearly it's not as popular. So the ordinary person will not go to those niche areas to hear the narrative. They will open up to the predominant Western thing where they come out of the United States, which is even bigger than where they come out of Europe. Yes. Even though they're the same group of people, America has the predominance of the media. So the reason why they go over it again is because they have always controlled their narrative and put us as a part of what they are explaining. But what happened with the explosion over the last couple of weeks, as Sandra Corey said a couple of days ago, America is at a point where it's questioning its own values. It's looking at its own narrative. It's like in the 60s when it was really starting to look again at what are we all about. It's not then for Black Lives Matter to be waiting for somebody to define them. It's take advantage of this time now to advance your, you know, I don't want no excuse, man, because we sound like we say, well, boy, it ain't gone again with we narrative. No, we're responsible for our narrative.
We know, even they say they gone again with we narrative. We know that that's what their narrative is. Yeah. We also know that the wisdom of the imperialists is very wise in its view of historic actions such as what is happening right now.
Which is what our responsibility is. I mean, you go back to Marcus Garvey, he says that we have a value in studying history so that we don't repeat it.
That's right.
And that a people who do not have a knowledge of their history is like a tree
without root.
All right. So,
but,
I mean, we've heard these principles. If we know to put them in a practice in 2020, who is to blame?
Us.
All right, good.
No, I'm going to say that 2 days ago is the anniversary of the Soweto Youth Uprising, when they killed primary school students.
Yes, yes.
When all these students was in the street.
We forgot that.
We can't forget those things.
I'm saying, unless you told a lot of people listening.
The institutional memory.
They know me, I remember that.
The institutional memory is being thwarted in a different direction with the narrative of the other people. And again, remember what I said first. We don't have a black media institution that takes our narrative on and put it forward. They're not telling us that we have 28 African leaders that is not taking no mess right now.
But all right, look like the conversation will be about this, because I wanted to talk about products, but you're just causing my mind to jump. Is it look, when we started to talk about Black Lives Matter in Belize, our main media in Belize right now is social media.
Yes.
If you look at how Belizeans, many of them black Belizeans, were responding to the BLM, you really got the impression that people may say things like that are them people cross there.
Yes.
We don't got no kind of racism here. And why want to try bring them kind of thing here in a Belize, etc., etc., etc. Even though you had this medium here, which is Cromandala, which includes the newspaper, the radio, and the TV, consistently in its own 50-year history trying to maintain the importance of the conversation. But there's a blowback where people say, Mandala thing, and then black thing. In 2020, we still have that kind of, why you they talk black? Why you need to bring up this black thing?
That is how Evan X. Hyde was confronted in 1968.
Yeah.
It hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And I think that it hasn't changed because our media in Belize creates its own stars for its own purposes. We have not gained that real, righteous operation that defines what is going to put out there and make sure that that definition is a Pan-Africanist, pro-African, pro-self.
Let us turn it then to Nigel Petillo, who is doing something at a grassroots level for disenfranchised people, many of whom are black people, and calling for land, and calling for the access to land. And by the way, Nigel, they say that if you own property in a crooked tree, that we should have find one spot and squat pan for you land, which is what some people are saying, oh, I'm against squatting because this man they talk about squat pan land. The brother is not talking about finding land that is owned and being cultivated, and you understand me, and squat pan that. The brother is saying what he's been saying from the time they were doing with Big A, is if you could find tracts of land, and there are thousands of acres of land like this, that is owned by absentee persons. Government know that these things are absentee, but through their own thing, as they say, bed of corruption, they have found ways in which these lands can be resold, taken back in most cases if it was leased, and sold to other individuals. What Nigel's voice is saying is that if you give us access to really find out, we'll find thousands of acres of such land that you could then utilize in some kind of program of giving people back to the land, not so that they could sell the land, because some people say, oh, if you get in the land, oh, all they can do is go to the bank and try to get something for the land and so on. That's a negative approach. There are people who would take that land, and especially if you back it up with training and etc. to build a culture, which is what you and your wife were doing with these kids. You were building a culture. You can't just put people on land and say cultivate. You have to build one culture of that. And so I'm saying all of that to say that bringing back the argument that you're talking about, our own negative narrative, is that what Nigel was saying is that you need to provide an opportunity for ordinary people to have access to land. Yet, people that throw dirty water upon him. As if when you try squat upon land and you don't agree with that, and the man...
Well, you know what happened to the messenger? You know what happened to the messenger?
Well, boy, we like kill the messengers.
Well, the one
maybe we figure if we kill the messenger, then the messenger will go away.
But it can't.
Yeah.
It can't, because we're talking about life. We're talking about an activity that is in harmony with nature. No, the most Belizeans don't even know to what level we have developed from that garden over there, even though the garden look like it does right now.
Do we have any pictures of that garden? I hope that
we have all pictures.
All right, yeah, I hope we have some pictures.
If we were to understand that we took that idea to other countries, if we were to understand and believe...
You also got that idea from other countries.
Yes,
all right.
Because it's a synergy. Yeah. People doing things, and then you see it and you say, you know, we could use this thing here in Belize.
Okay.
You understand?
Yeah.
Well, Dr. McKay is actually signatory to UNIPOP. What is UNIPOP? Let me explain.
All right. Dr. McKay is your wife.
Right.
Okay.
UNIPOP is a consortium of universities that is signed on to the Garvey-Chatouillet Economic Initiative. The Garvey-Chatouillet Economic Initiative is a 4-point agenda that deals with education and specific training, agriculture, for food sovereignty, communication information as a business, and community-based tourism, tourism that comes into our community and lives with us.
All right, so what you were trying to do is you were trying to change the narrative that say that that piece of bush in your yard
Has value.
that just for raccoon and whatever they run in there, and you were changing that narrative
Yes.
to say there's
It has
wealth
value.
there's wealth there.
That
Secondly,
garden, let me go a little further. That garden right there was treating a lady with cancer for 3 years.
yeah,
That lady still going in the
but you
garden.
had to change that from being just bush, because
Right.
in our mind, look out, for years we did drive from Belize to Benke, and we did drive from Belize City to Corozal, and with the same thing
Bush.
on the side, and we just consider it bush.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, now that they've been developing and pushing back some of that, some of us are amazed to know that there was something behind that bush.
Yes,
Right?
because
So
it's
in our mind, it's bush. So now you are trying to change that. And when the refugee from Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, and then place came here, they never see bush.
No,
They
because,
say land.
because where they
When the
come from.
Mennonite came here in 1958, they never see bush. They saw land.
Yes.
So the obvious was a colonial process that went on for us to be driving in a 2020 and just see bush.
Somebody told me, and I haven't, and I really should have already done it. Somebody told me some time ago, I think it was Brother Bert Tucker, told me that inside of our constitution there's a piece of legislature that stops us, nationals, from doing commercial agriculture.
Well, it was a part of the slave pattern, and to
No.
try to make sure that we don't become agriculturally independent, especially when they needed our labor specifically for mahogany.
Now, in terms of the migrant that has come to Belize, when you understand that there is no work for them in the countries where they were, how did they eat? They ate from their self-sustained gardens.
Indeed, indeed.
When you go to Haiti, the garden might be just as big as this desk, but they have a chicken
Yes, yes.
just the size of this
And
desk.
you know, Brother Emerson, what I've seen is pictures in Taiwan where they have a shortage of land. These people do that stuff
on the side of their building?
on this in the league veranda when they got them, and they
Yes.
got tomato, they got
Yes.
cabbage, they got all kind of thing they grow. Not in the earth, but in the earth that they bring up
To where
in
they
their
are.
apartment.
Yes.
So it's amazing. So I'm saying again, what you and your wife was attempting to do was to explore the possibilities that it's in your hand, that you don't have to sit down and wait for somebody to do it for you. That if you work smart, you could cultivate that land, and you were able then to start producing things like moringa.
Yes.
You've gone from just the moringa tree to actually value added,
Yes.
to be able to package it, know that you could give it to somebody who may not understand the value of the land, but you could understand.
No, I
that.
got to tell you one story right
Please
now.
tell me that story. We don't got a lot of time, but
I want
tell
to
me
get, and
that
this story is so close to my heart. There's a man that works for me as a mason, and there were times when people gave me an opportunity for seedlings, and because I did not have a farm, I didn't say leave the seedlings there. I told somebody else, go get the seedlings, you use it, brother. Recently, as we were supporting the Nigel Petillo land movement, we needed a little bit of funding to help the young people who were supporting Nigel. And I have to tell you, man, the same man that I did not even think about, that I had forgotten that I had ever given him any space for anything. This man looked at me, he didn't lay black to me, but he looked at me and said, Mr. Gill, you know, you could go to my farm and harvest 1,000 pineapple, you know. I was taken aback. Because the man don't live in Belize City, don't live in a Belize district. But he work for me at Belmont right now.
Mm-hmm.
He said, get one truck, one trailer, and I want to carry it to my place, and you bring some people and I help on harvest 1,000 pineapple.
These are the pineapple from the season
Yes.
where you get.
You understand?
Yeah.
These things are,
Yeah.
it's so,
You know how much one pineapple now, my brother? and he got 1,000 and the beautiful thing about it, he never gone and buy one car for himself and a car for his sweetheart, and
No.
he still work as a mason for you while he got so that will change our culture. Maybe the main problem what we have to try fix the how we think, the value system that we got.
I agree.
And maybe when we change that system and change the focus, a lot of the exploitation that takes place on us is because we allow ourselves to be exploited because of the way we think. So maybe what you're doing and what your wife was doing in trying to get young people to think differently, the value added of that is that over a period of time, we're not there. Yes, we're not there in the same
economic program
mentality.
The economic program is ours.
Yeah.
It's an organic economic program that will sustain us.
Yeah.
You understand? I think that is the most scary thing to a politician. And I think that's why they're bucking Nigel.
Yeah, well,
and
I noticed that Cordell is really the only politician I saw that came out and lend his voice to what Nigel was doing.
I truly appreciate that.
And, you know, it stands out because even his party leader did not take a strong position. And I haven't seen his party take a strong position, but he stepped out almost like on water to be able to say, look, what Nigel to do, that's something positive, something worthwhile, and something, in fact, if I was in a position, I would commission Nigel to go all over the country
and do this
and identify these areas. And then what would you do? Well, he stopped short of saying what you're gonna do. But I would imagine, well, we need to start to address this issue of land, not only as a game piece of land, but land for cultivation and for turning the paradigm.
I had a brief conversation with...
And we got to make this your last point.
I had a brief conversation with Brother Cordell while he was there at Nigel's place. Because on that day, we were told anybody going to Nigel's place would be arrested. And of course, the inspector that was in charge of the detail out there and I had a 9-minute conversation that was recorded, which I think Belize should see over and over and over, because I actually talked about the Convention for Social, Economic, and Cultural Rights, which Belize is signed on to.
From which, who is that? All right, Edmund. All right, let's take this call from the Minister, Castro. Welcome, Minister. And you're still known as Clear the Land? I just want to know.
Sir.
Huh?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Welcome, Minister. Just to pull your leg. Go ahead,
morning. Yeah, good morning.
Welcome.
I'm calling to notify the general public on the situation at the mile 38 and a half at St. Matthews, where we have a bridge. The abutment for the bridge has collapsed. And so we will prevent all vehicular traffic from traversing in that area. And we're asking for those who have no need to travel to stay off the highway to give access to Ministry of Works to go out there and deal with the damage assessment for that bridge so that we could get it up and running as quickly as possible.
All right, I'll give the location again, brother.
St. Matthews at mile 38 and a half, St. Matthews.
All right.
Where the abutment of the bridge has severely compromised.
Is that the Beaver Dam? The Beaver Dam Creek you're talking about?
I'm not sure if you call it. No. It's you see when you left St. Matthew's Primary School, you go down a quarter mile, and then it's right there in
just before the Frank Edit Junction.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, no. After the Frank Edit Junction, that's going towards the big bridge. Towards the big bridge at St. Matthews.
Well, we got two little hills, so it's in the middle of one of them little hills there. I know where it is.
Yeah. It's in the middle of two hills.
I'm intimately knowledgeable about that village because I helped to build it, the first school building and everything.
Well, I'm glad you're making people aware of it as the minister responsible for NEMO, and we'll repeat it again before the end of the show, Minister Castro. And thank you very much.
And we also have a portion of the Hummingbird Highway that has been compromised. I don't know to what extent that section or how many sections has been compromised. I'm waiting to get that that information, and I will call you back.
All right.
Update you
Yeah,
so
we'd
we could,
appreciate that.
inform the
So-
general public as well.
Yes, so that people are aware. All right, thank you very much, my brother.
Okay, then, thanks a
Appreciate
lot.
it. Yeah. Your final
My
comment,
final
brother.
comment
Yeah,
was,
it has to be very short, very
met-
short.
I had a few words with Brother Cordell, and we were talking about post-COVID-19 and the vital need for people to understand food shortages is imminent. And the garden idea, I told him that we could collaborate and begin to spring gardens up all over Lake Eye as a model for the rest of the country. And I'm hoping that we can further that conversation. Because
All
I
right,
think
I
it's
hope
vitally
so too,
important.
especially since you're in his constituency. All right, our guest this morning, our first guest, was our brother Emerson Gill, who has been actively involved in a number of areas. And we thank him for being here, and we look forward to him coming back and exploring a little bit more of this change of culture necessary for us to not be the complainers of our situation, but in fact be the changers of our situation.
Being the element of this change.
And he and his wife has been very actively involved in that. So thank you very much, my brother.
I would like to make sure that the public knows Dr. McKay, in her own rights, stands predominant as well.
All right, well, you know, no make I get started with that. I'd give you a favor by mentioning that it's your wife. You know. All right, we'll take a break and we'll come back. Our next set of guests will be representatives of the Belize Chamber of Commerce.